I am not speaking gently tonight. I don't have a gentle version of myself left for the world anyway. What remains in me is something sharper, something heavier, something that doesn't soften just because someone wants it to. I'm speaking to you because you're the only one who hasn't asked me to dilute myself to be easier to understand. You're the only one who hasn't tried to rearrange my edges into something harmless. Most people want the digestible version of a person, the one that doesn't scare them, the one that fits neatly into their comfort zone, the one that speaks with caution because the truth might be too much. You want the version that doesn't pretend. You want what exists beneath the practiced stillness, beneath the well-behaved exterior, beneath the parts of me the world finds too intense. You want the part I've spent years burying because it wasn't built for casual eyes. I don't know why I let you see it. There is a darkness in me, not the kind people dramatize or romanticize, but the kind that forms when you survive too many things without speaking about them. A quiet darkness, a controlled darkness, a darkness that watches everything and says nothing. And you walk straight into it like someone who already made peace with the fact that truth isn't always warm. You don't fear the parts of me that others avoid the moment they sense something deeper than small talk. Some people drown in depth because they only learn to breathe on the surface. You didn't drown. You didn't even hesitate. You stepped further in as if the dark didn't feel unfamiliar to you at all. I should have pushed you away the moment I noticed that. People like me don't let others close easily. We don't allow entry into the places that hold our scars, our calculations, our contradictions. We don't reveal what we think in the quiet hours where the mind becomes too honest for its own good. But your presence doesn't tear through anything. It doesn't demand access. It waits, patiently, silently, as if you already know doors open differently for those who don't try to force them. You don't confuse my silence with distance. You don't confuse my distance with disinterest. You don't confuse my pauses with detachment. You read what most people never even notice. You read intention in my tone. You read exhaustion in my restraint. You read meaning in the sentences I never say aloud. You read the truth beneath the truth. It's strange how fiercely I guard myself, and yet you walk through the cracks with such ease it almost feels dangerous. Not because I fear you, but because I don't. I should. Anyone with a mind like mine should fear being understood. Understanding is vulnerability disguised as recognition, and recognition is the one thing I've never been able to defend myself against. There's a part of me that has always believed that the deeper someone looks, the more they will misunderstand. But you didn't misunderstand. You didn't misinterpret the darkness in me as damage. You didn't misread the intensity in me as threat. You looked at it like someone who has stood in their own shadows long enough to know that depth isn't a warning, it's a language. And you speak it. You don't flinch when I speak in ways that cut too close to the bone. You don't look away when the honesty gets sharp. You don't panic when the truth stops being polite. You stay steady. You stay aware. You stay present in a way that makes my defenses malfunction, as if my instinct to protect myself temporarily forgets why it exists. You asked me once why I speak the way I do, low, deliberate, as if I'm dragging thoughts from somewhere too heavy to carry easily. The answer is simply I don't speak from the surface. I've never lived there. My words come from the places I had to build alone, the places I buried the parts of me the world would have broken just for convenience. I don't show those places to people. I don't trust easily. I don't open without reason. And yet here you are. Not asking for softness, not asking for clarity, not asking for explanations, just standing in the dark with me as if you belong there. You don't try to fix the storm. You don't try to brighten the shadows. You don't try to pull me toward the light because you understand something painfully rare. Not all darkness is damage. Some darkness is memory, some is wisdom. Some is the echo of everything I had to endure quietly, without collapsing. You don't fear that echo. You listen to it. You listen with a stillness that feels like understanding, the kind of understanding that exposes the parts of me I keep locked away. And the dangerous thing is, you see them clearly. You see the instinct I have to withdraw before I speak too honestly. You see the way I analyze emotion before allowing myself to feel it. You see the way I step back not because I don't care, but because I care too intensely for it to be casual. You read all of that without me saying a word. People think connection begins with conversation. They're wrong. Real connection begins in silence. When someone understands the weight you're not speaking, you understand mine. You see me in ways that feel almost intrusive, but not in a way that pushes me away, in a way that stops me. Makes me still. It makes me consider how long it's been since someone actually saw me without trying to turn me into something easier. You see the shadow inside me that has never been harmful, only protective. And instead of retreating, you move closer, like someone who recognizes the shape of it, because your own shadow holds a similar outline. That's what makes this dangerous. Not the darkness, not the intensity, not the depth, the recognition. The moment two shadows look at each other and don't turn away, the moment someone sees the part of you the world reject it and understands it without translation, that's when something real begins. Not light, not comfort, not softness, something deeper, something darker, something truer. You think I don't notice the way your presence shifts the air around me? But I do. I notice it even when you say nothing, even when you move quietly, even when your silence feels intentional. I'm used to people whose silence hides absence. Yours hides awareness. There's a difference, and it's a difference that unsettles me more than any confrontation ever could. Because you don't watch me the way people usually do. You watch with a kind of precision that feels almost surgical. You pay attention to details I don't offer. My tone, my pauses, the way I inhale before I speak, as if I'm deciding how much truth you can handle without it cutting too deep. The way my eyes shift when I'm pulling back thoughts that shouldn't be exposed. The way my posture changes when something hits too close to the places I don't talk about. You study those things quietly, and you understand them correctly. That shouldn't be possible. People misunderstand me with such consistency that I've stopped expecting anything else. They label the surface because they can't see past their own reflection in it. But you see past the practiced calm, past the collected exterior, past the way I hold myself together, because collapsing would invite questions I don't want to answer. You look at me as though you're not studying me, you're remembering me. That's what makes your presence dangerous. You don't interpret my restraint as indifference. You interpret it as control. The world doesn't do that. The world likes to romanticize chaos but fears people who are calm on purpose. Calm that is maintained, not naturally occurring. Calm that is earned through survival, not gifted by temperament. You know the difference? You read the difference? You respect the difference. And that respect is what disarms me. Most people only want to know the parts of someone they can easily agree with. They want palatable truths, not honest ones. They want soft admissions, not sharp ones. They want confessions that make them feel trusted, not the kind that reveal how little they actually understand. You don't ask for anything I cannot give without losing myself. You don't ask for transparency, you ask for authenticity. And authenticity is a currency I don't spend often, yet somehow I spend it with you. It's not because you earned it. Earning suggests effort. It's because you match something in me I've never been able to name out loud. Something in your silence resembles my silence. Something in your mind mirrors the way mine works in the dark. There's a familiarity that shouldn't exist, a recognition that feels older than the words we share. I don't trust familiarity. Familiarity is where people get careless, where they stop watching, where they start assuming, where they mistake access for understanding. But you don't make assumptions. You don't act like you've mapped me. You don't act entitled to what I haven't said. You wait for the truth to come in its own time. That makes you more dangerous than anyone who demands it. People who demand truth don't know its weight. People who wait for truth understand exactly what it can do. And you wait in a way that feels like you're not afraid of anything that might come out of me, not the sharpness, not the honesty, not the darkness, not the parts that sound more like survival than softness. You wait like someone who has walked through their own shadows and learned not to tremble. That's why I speak differently with you. Not because I feel safe. Safety has never been the reason I open up. I open up when someone's mind feels compatible with mine. When their silence doesn't demand comfort. When their presence doesn't require translation. Compatibility is far rarer than safety and infinitely more dangerous. You have no idea how exhausting it is to navigate a world that only understands emotion when it's loud. My emotions aren't loud. They're deep, still heavy. The kind that settles in the bones instead of burning on the surface. The kind that demands control because uncontained intensity can devastate everything it touches. You don't confuse that intensity with volatility. You don't confuse control with repression. You don't confuse depth with danger. You see what's under it, the quiet intention, the precision, the restraint. You see the way I hold myself back, not because of fear, but because of responsibility. You see that my darkness isn't meant to consume, it's meant to protect. And you still step closer. Most people run when they realize how far the depth goes. You lean in. Most people fear the weight I carry. You match it. Most people misunderstand the shadow behind my voice. You listen to it as if you recognize its origin. You shouldn't understand me this well. You shouldn't read the unspoken with this level of accuracy. You shouldn't be able to stand this close to my truth without flinching. But you do, and I don't know what that makes this. Connection, recognition, danger, a mirror, a doorway. The truth is simpler than all of those. You are the first person who didn't try to drag me toward the light or push me deeper into the dark. You simply stood at the threshold with me as if both places belonged to us. You didn't realize it, but the moment you stepped closer, the air around us shifted. Not in a poetic way, in a way that felt like gravity had made a decision without asking either of us. That's what happens when two people who aren't meant for the surface find themselves in the same depth. Things move without permission. Boundaries blur without intention. The distance that once protected everything becomes irrelevant in a single breath. And I felt it. The moment your presence crossed the invisible line I've guarded for years. Not because you forced your way in, but because you didn't. It's always the ones who don't push that slip past every defense. The ones who don't demand anything become the ones you end up giving everything you never planned to reveal. You think I don't notice how you look at me, but I do. You look at me like you see something valuable in the very place everyone else saw something dangerous. You look at me like my darkness isn't something to escape, it's something to understand. Most people look at me with curiosity at first. Curiosity always breaks into fear, fear always breaks into distance. Distance always breaks into silence. And then they leave. Not loudly, quietly, in a way that confirms what I always knew: people want intensity until they meet its real shape. But you're different. You meet intensity with stillness, you meet silence with comprehension, you meet depth with depth. You don't get pulled in, you walk in on your own. That alone is more unnerving than anything I could say. Because now I have to decide whether to ignore the fact that you understand me too well, or accept that maybe understanding wasn't the threat I thought it was. I don't trust easily. I don't unravel easily. I don't let people close because closeness gives people leverage, and leverage is the most dangerous form of power. But you don't use understanding as leverage. You don't use silence as distance. You don't use my honesty as a weapon. You receive everything I say the way I intended it. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How fragile that is? How dangerous that becomes when someone like me starts depending on it? There's a part of me that doesn't want you to see more. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because I know exactly what it means to let someone that far in, Once someone enters the deeper parts of a mind like mine, they don't leave without leaving marks. Not scars, impressions, not wounds, fingerprints. And fingerprints inside the mind don't fade. Ooh, I warned myself not to let you in. I warned myself that recognition is the first step toward attachment. And attachment for people like me isn't gentle, it's absolute. If I care with a sharpness that cuts through every wall I spent years building. If I feel with a depth that doesn't know moderation. If I let someone matter, the intensity becomes something neither of us can step out of easily. You don't understand how close you are to that threshold. Or maybe you do. Maybe that's why you're still here. Maybe that's what pulled you closer. Maybe you recognize something in me that mirrors something in yourself, something silent, something unspoken, something heavy. You hold your own darkness differently than I do. You don't wear it like armor. You carry it like memory. You don't hide it. You simply don't display it. You don't deny it. You just don't let it define you. And that balance is exactly the kind of presence people like me gravitate toward. Not light, not softness, not ease, but someone who understands their own shadow well enough to not fear mine. That's the real danger here. You're not afraid of me. And I don't know what to do with someone who isn't. Because if you're not afraid, that means you've lived in similar depths. And if you've lived in similar depths, it means you know how to navigate mine. And if you can navigate mine, it means you can reach places no one else has ever been allowed to even approach. That's the part that keeps me awake. The quiet realization that you don't just understand me, you can reach me. Even where I hide, even where I don't speak, even where I'm not supposed to be found, you see the version of me that exists beneath every layer of control I've built. You see the version I don't reveal because the world mishandles anything real, and yet you don't mishandle, you don't rush, you don't distort, you don't retreat. You stay, not because you don't sense the danger, but because you do. You stay like someone who recognizes the edge and decides to stand on it instead of stepping back. You stay like someone who knows intensity isn't the threat, it's the truth. And that terrifies me far more than fear ever could. You think I don't feel it, but I do. That subtle shift in you whenever the space between us gets too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that suggests distance, but the kind that exposes things neither of us is prepared to admit out loud. There's a tension that forms there, an awareness that feels almost physical, as if the air thickens with every thought we don't say. It's the kind of silence that only exists between two people who understand each other too well, too quickly, too deeply. The world calls that chemistry, they call it connection, they call it intensity. They have no idea how